Yeah, welcome back everyone. This is the second lecture relating to chapter 4. Remember, these slides are only part of the course. An important element is that you need to read the textbook. So this just highlights certain aspects which I think might be important and where I can add value. So looking at the research problem and translating it from a marketing problem, the research problem is really a redefinition of the marketing problem. And just so that you don't get confused, this is often referred to as a marketing problem, a management problem, or a decision-making problem. They're obviously closely related, but differ. The marketing problem covers the decision that needs to be made, as opposed to the research problem, which determines what information is needed to make a decision, and certainly how it can be obtained efficiently and effectively. So the decision making problem is really what the decision maker needs to do. It's action orientated and really focused on symptoms. So if one thinks about your sales dropping, obviously we need to improve sales or stop the decrease in sales, and that's really the symptoms. That's where we can see that there's actually a problem, as opposed to the research problem, which really asks what information is needed to really understand the source of this problem, the symptoms. So really we're focusing on information and trying to focus on the underlying causes. It could be that consumers have some perception of our product which needs to be corrected. So we first need to understand the research problem, or and make sure that we collect appropriate information. So if we understand why the consumers have got a perception about our product, it will allow us to make a decision. So some of the options that we've got would be perhaps improve or eliminate a product. So the research problem would obviously have to be that we understand the consumers. We could perhaps introduce an existing product to a new market. Should we increase advertising or sales promotion? Perhaps the consumers don't actually understand our market, our product, I beg your pardon. So we obviously need to look at the market acceptance of the product in terms of introducing an existing product to a new market, and how will consumers receive advertising or sales promotion? What will be the most effective? Should we use social media? These are all sorts of decisions that we need to make. Then now the research problem is usually formulated as a question, and typically would be phrased as who, what, how, etc. The advantage of formulating the research problem as a question is that it allows you to state the problem directly, so there's no ambiguity about it. It makes things a lot easier and a lot clearer. Okay, research hypotheses are an important element of marketing research, because it really states possible reasons for the marketing problem, or possible solutions to the marketing problem. So generally it's an unproven statement, and that's the purpose of the marketing research, is to test that hypothesis. Now you'll appreciate the language that I've used is been very carefully selected. So it's not a case of proving the hypothesis or disproving the hypothesis. It's quite a complicated, or conceptually, no, it's not so complicated, but more conceptually difficult to understand the theory behind hypotheses. So really what you try and do is you try and disprove the null hypothesis, and that allows you to accept the alternative hypothesis. So it's not a case of proving one hypothesis, it's a case of disproving the null hypothesis. That's the one with the 0, which allows you to accept the alternative hypotheses. And you report it in a particular way. I won't spend too much time dealing with this at the moment. We can deal with it a little bit later, as I said, in chapter 13, but just be aware that there is some conventions that are usually applied in respect of hypotheses, so you need to be familiar with them and make sure that you're on top of them before you start reporting them. Otherwise your examiners or the readers might be quite critical of your writing. So just an example, so we don't measure the whole population, we only really measure a sample of that population. So for example, we talk about the university and students, and the decision we make is based on the characteristics of the sample that we've taken. So that's something to bear in mind. And just to illustrate this, I've put a little diagram in there. So really what happens is that you can see we've got the population. From the population we draw a sample, we run the stats on the statistics relating to the sample, and from that we draw conclusions about the population. So just a quick quiz. What's the difference between defining a research and ultimately we try and formulate research objectives, which is driven by the research problem, and there are two different types. Broadly speaking, there's a primary objective, so that's just a general statement about or a more general statement about the objective of what we're trying to achieve, and the secondary objectives relate to a specific aspect of the topic. So for example, if we had to consider a business like Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's, and assuming that their turnover is dropping, a primary objective could be to research what the consumers think about the McDonald's offering. Secondary objectives could be, say for example, what are the consumer perceptions about the taste of the product, the packaging of the product, the service when one goes to buy a McDonald's product. So really it's unpacking the primary objective into a whole lot of more particular secondary objectives. Alright, that's the end of chapter 4. We'll be moving on to chapter 5 shortly. Thank you.